Shelley, unfortunately, has been subsumed by Matt's mustache.
What is that supposed to mean, Chris?
Your mustache requires protein to generate.
Okay. Great. So that's a weird start to the podcast.
It is. Since it's Matt and I, we can finally do our sports podcast commentators. So how about them Dodgers? They're coming in with a home run down the bend, and Jimmy is the lucky horse.
It would be far more apropos to talk about basketball or football this season.
Why?
No particular reason.
Do sports have seasons?
No.
Well, whatever. Fine, we'll talk about China then.
All right,
that's something we're apparently better at, maybe. So there's a horrible new disease spreading in China, and hey, Trump and Biden going to an election while a disease in China is spreading.
Well, it's not just in China. This is the Mycoplasma pneumonia. Yeah. Is what they're calling it, mm-hmm. which is a bacterial pneumonia, mm-hmm. and it seems to be higher cases than normal reported in Ohio and some countries in Europe.
Oh, I mean, it's already
international. Now, what I've read about it is that it's somewhat cyclical in the sense that something like this happens every 7-10 years. Like there's a cycle for pneumonias.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question now is what's happening in China this, but like an extremely bad version, right? Mm-hmm. Because at different times, pneumonias can be more or less deadly.
It's like sports; they have seasons.
That's right.
This is what I've learned today. What have you learned today? But yeah, like I'm hearing from people I know in China that they have it. It's way worse than COVID. High fever, very painful, dizziness, and they're in hospitals that are completely overrun with like 2 doctors on staff.
Well, I mean, like COVID was pretty bad for people who got it.
Well, I mean, there was a variety,
right?
And what seems to be the case with this one is it's targeting young people more. Like young healthy people didn't have typically as severe reactions to COVID.
Right.
With this case, like my friend is young, healthy, so this seems different.
Your friend who's in China now,
yeah.
and was telling you about all this,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there was like huge lines at hospitals and like totally inadequate staffing, at least from this one anecdotal report.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I mean, the one thing that like really stood out to me was the fact that the Chinese Communist Party admits that there is something going on, because after everything that happened with COVID, after everything that happened with zero COVID, I don't think they would even acknowledge that there's any kind of illness going in China unless it was already such that they couldn't cover it up.
Yeah, and I think that the pressures are a little different because now people are more suspicious, mm-hmm. right? Because I think it's broadly understood, including by the World Health Organization at this point, that there was a cover-up in China mm-hmm. for COVID-19. And now there's just like the Communist Party kind of realizes that. And then there's the other thing, which is that I think from Xi Jinping's perspective, it is not possible to do a zero pneumonia type lockdown mm-hmm. because the social unrest that resulted from zero COVID was so great that I think the party really freaked out.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, people actually calling for Xi Jinping and the Communist Party to step down.
Yeah.
Plus the economic impact.
Sure. Yeah. And China was already reeling from pretty severe economic hit after zero COVID and, a few other factors, including less Western investment in China than before.
Yeah. A bunch of countries are, there's less importing, exporting going on. China's manufacturing is contracting. I think this is like the second month in a row it's contracted more than expected. And I mean, you got to keep in mind, even like when you go around and like, go to your favorite local Cracker Barrel and you see made in China stuff, like keep in mind that's not like loads of money going back to China because, everything is state-run, state subsidies. Their profit margin on things that they're selling is probably not as high as you would think.
No. But also even Cracker Barrel, like I remember when you and I were in Palm Beach in 2017, remember when you were trying to interview Xi Jinping during his visit with Trump? And we went to Cracker Barrel mm-hmm. and like everything we looked at was made in China, like the American flag hats, like
Yeah.
made in China, right? Everything. And I went to a Cracker Barrel in Mississippi earlier this year, and I was just looking just out of curiosity, and there were very few made in China things. There was a lot of like Vietnam, Indonesia, some made in USA, but it was definitely like it was very different, and things have clearly changed. And oh my gosh, it's been 6 years. I can't believe how time goes by.
Yeah.
Neither of us had facial hair then. It was a very different era.
Really? Not even me?
Not even you,
Wow.
Chris.
That's crazy. Yeah, I always think back about that 30 Rock episode where they decide to like manufacture a sofa made in the USA, to like bring back American manufacturing. But like everyone's forgotten how to make a sofa, and like it's this horrible deformed thing that's like torturous to sit in. And eventually like the joke at the end of the episode is that like the US government hires them to make this sofa as a torture device.
Oh gosh.
To like, extract information from terrorists. But this is like an actual thing. Like
Right.
people think like you can just restart manufacturing in the US, but it's actually complicated because the know-how is gone. We saw that with mask manufacturing. Like it took time for I think it was like 6 or 8 months before other American factories were able to start pumping out masks. And that's something as simple as a mask.
Right. I recently bought a new sofa. And I really wanted something that was made in the US. And I just like really prioritized this and did a lot of like different shopping around. And it was so hard to find. But eventually I found a manufacturer. It took 6 months. I mean, it was a custom order, so it took time. But it took 6 months, and it was probably 2.5 times the price of a similar couch that I could have gotten made in China. Like I just paid so much more for it, and I was willing to do it because like I got to put my money where my mouth is, right? But nonetheless, there was that hesitation, like, oh man, like am I really doing this for Made in America? Because like that's not great. And if there was a lot more of this kind of like carpentry and manufacturing in America, then the prices wouldn't be as high, the wait times wouldn't be as long, like all these things, right?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason so much is made in China is because of different kinds of subsidies that actually make it cheaper to make something on the other side of the world and then ship it here, which is insane.
Yeah,
Like that shouldn't be cheaper.
What I hate about this is like one, the workers in U.S. factories are paid some kind of living wage, and it's almost always more than minimum wage because it's a skilled job, right? In China, they're being paid far less,
if not outright slave labor.
So it's bad to workers. It's also horrible for the environment because those factories are powered often by coal, whereas the U.S. has a somewhat more renewable energy, although it's not perfect. And then you have the massive carbon impact of shipping things on like, container ships and shipping them halfway around the world, then loading them onto trucks and then shipping them across the country, right? Like it's just so inefficient. And like, as you point out, like there's subsidies, right? So there's even, those are just like ordinary Chinese people's tax money going to subsidize like cheap labor that's bad for workers and bad for the environment and bad for the US.